Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Kim. I'm the CEO and founder of a Seattle-based mobile social gaming company called Kairos Labs. Kairos in ancient Greek stands for the moment your effort turns to achievement. I most recently was director of Xbox Live Incubation, was a founder of a number of new ventures there that I'll talk about, and I feel a little bit out of place here because I'm a technologist, spent 15 years in the interactive entertainment industry and fell into the well-being industry kind of by accident. My wife is a clinical psychologist. My father is a sociologist, and I think they just got frustrated with me not actually using my tech skills to actually make the world a better place and get people off their couch than playing Xbox all the time. So we formed this company a few months ago, and with the help of a lot of people, we think, helped to define a new genre that we call behavior change gaming. And I know that some of you earlier heard from my friend David Reeves about quantified self, about self-tracking. There's some flavors of that here, but what I want to do in my talk is cover basically two things. One is, what is behavior change gaming and why is that an interesting opportunity for us to explore together? And then secondly, I'll talk a little bit about Livin'. You can go to livin.it now. We are in private beta. We are in our third iteration of our habit development game, and I'll talk more about that later. So some of the work that we did in Xbox Live, of course, exergaming. Xbox Live is the leading platform now for exergaming, Dance Revolution, Dance Central. We learned a lot from that experience in terms of how people really want to extend more of the Xbox experience into wellness. This extended into mobile, so we experimented with taking your Xbox Live avatar out into the real world on your phone. So as you walked around in the real world, your avatar might react correspondingly to where you were geographically. So here you might actually walk into a Radio Shack, for instance, and your avatar might start to play with some of the Radio Shack toys, or if you walked into the Gap, your avatar would start to wear Gap jeans. And so this kind of was a really mind-blowing for us because we didn't expect so many people to be excited about it. Of course, this is existed in Asia for quite a long time on mobile phones in Asia. Things like Tamagotchi-like games where you can buy adornments for your avatar in Asia for microcurrency. But in the US hasn't really taken off until really we saw the advent of apps on the iPhone just about 2 or 3 years ago. So one of the other projects was an interactive table. Some of you may be familiar with, we call it Surface. It's in essence a tabletop, which is a computer that recognizes gestures on the surface of the table, reacts in video, and also can recognize objects. So some people call it a big-ass iPhone or iPad. It's a little bit more than that. It's kind of think of it as Minority Report-ish, if you will. And this is really, again, us experimenting with the merging and blending of the digital world with the real world. So, you may not be able to see it because of the lighting here, but what is happening with gaming is quite fascinating. Again, I'm kind of coming at this from a different vector. This is a study that was released this summer by Latitude showing kind of where are the new gamers and where is gaming going. And if you look here in the upper left, right-hand corner, you'll see that 47% of people are interested in games to achieve personal goals. 24% are interested in games that help me to do more good for society, and that is really kind of astounding, given that this genre of serious games or games for health has really kind of just started to take off in the last year or two. If you drill into that study a little further, they have more data here in terms of specific kinds of games that people would like to see. And learning and education, surprisingly, comes out very high. I think if you look at Khan Academy, that's a great example of that. But also if you look at personal wellness and healthcare, 72% of people were interested in more games for personal wellness and healthcare. So that's great. That's kind of, from my perspective, a great business opportunity, a great market opportunity, a nascent industry, and that's why, among other reasons like making my wife happy, I wanted to leave Xbox. So what's happening with the broader industry? So I think we're kind of in that 15 minutes of fame for the quantified self, and I have some tough words of tough love for quantified self. Luckily, my friend David isn't here to hear this, but I'll share with you some of my thoughts. This is a cover of Technology Review that was, I think, this past summer, talking about kind of the advent of the measured life. You can almost think of quantified self as being a representation of the Latin saying modus ergo sum, which is I measure, therefore I am, right? And really, there's some amazing implementations of this. If you look at the Feltron report, Nicholas Feltron, who's now the chief designer for Facebook, he's the one that came up with the Facebook timeline. If any of you have tried that, this is the Feltron report from 2011. He would produce every year a printed annual report of his life, detailing everything he did that year. Everything he ate, everywhere he walked, everyone he met, every email he ever responded to, everything. Okay, and it's beautiful. I mean, think about this as like data visualization on crack here. And I love data visualization, and I think this is a fantastic view of it. However, I think it's somewhat problematic. If you look at, from our perspective, health gamification, right? There are over 100 or so, I would think, last I checked, websites that you could go to that would help you to journal or track your health in some fashion. And if you look at least 5 of the leading ones, I've redacted part of their names here to protect the somewhat innocent, you can see that this is clearly not working. And why is that? I call them single-player self-tracking gamification. Single player meaning I myself am mostly interacting with this web application, might be journaling what I ate, how many steps I walked, what food I ate, etc. And you see a problem here, don't you? One of the companies has said that they lose, and this is one of the 5 most frequently talked about companies in this space, that they lose 90% of their users within the first 2 weeks. Another one said anyone who can code can create a self-tracking application. So clearly self-tracking or gamification or quantified self alone isn't working. So kind of why is this? I think the first problem is it's mostly single player, right? So what is single player? Single player is autonomous, it's disconnected, it's narrow to zero feedback. You're lucky if you get any meaningful, helpful feedback from the application that is demonstrably improving your behavior in any way. And frankly, they're mostly journaling applications, right? So I asked a friend of mine who works for a company I really admire, one of the major geolocation mobile applications, what did she think was the purpose for her application? And she said, it's journaling. Right? It's not a game, it was journaling. And that's actually how I felt as well. It was kind of a travel log of just showing where over time I've been. And in some cases, it's double entry accounting, right? So I might have actually walked 100 steps, but I'm going to go to the web app now, and I'm going to tell it I walked 100 steps, right? Now we're getting to the point where actually the devices like Fitbit and others like Jawbone and others are coming out that will actually hopefully do some of that for us. But right now, I think most of this is single player. And so this is also a good example of what might be another issue with respect to the quantified self. I'll give you a second here to read this cartoon. Okay. So you might think that that's actually kind of a joke, right? But it turns out that over this past summer, while you guys were on vacation, Fitbit, one of the leading digital pedometers I mentioned to you earlier that's tracking your behavior and has a health gamification website on their portal, accidentally exposed your sex data to in the public world. So you can actually register how often you have sex on Fitbit. And this is, a major dough, right? So clearly, I don't think they intended to do this, but there can be some issues with respect to the quantified self. And there are other issues here, right? So we all heard this quote, of course, from Mr. Einstein, that really just tracking in and of itself is not the issue. We need to really be able to hone in on what's most important, what's the simplest, most effective, and sustainable thing that matters. Finding causality. This is from one of my old mentors, Ed Tufte from Yale, who talked about causality, right? So showing beautiful data is great, but really what you want to drive towards is an understanding of, so what? What do I do, right? What's the cause for what I want to try to address here? Another point that some people make in the QS movement about the dynamic of why it can be effective is a concept called the Hawthorne effect. The Hawthorne effect represents a study of experiments done about, I think, maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that seemed to indicate that if people in a study were observed and knew that they were being observed in an experiment, their performance in a work environment improved. Well, it turns out, and this is actually a recent study just done this year by the author of Freakonomics, Stephen Levitt from the University of Chicago Economics Department, that really kind of went into the original data and the subsequent data, analyzing that data, and found, quote, the results were mixed at best. The mythology surrounding the Hawthorne experiments was largely absent careful data analysis and has persisted for decades, even in the face of strong evidence against it. So clearly there's something going on with QS that is working for some people, right? But to depend on the masses to pick up QS because of the Hawthorne effect, that, hey, if you track it, modus ergo sum, you will improve, I don't believe that that case has been clearly made. Let me give you a more personal example of why single player is failing. Over the summer, I tracked on Facebook every day how many calories I walked at the gym. And here I was pretty proud. My goal was to hit a month every day, 31-day streak. I walked 780 calories that day, right? And I posted on Facebook, right? And so I'm kind of testing the waters here in terms of how is Facebook as a health gamification experience. Well, what do you think was kind of my disappointment here? Can anybody see? Do you know who that is? That's my wife. So that did not, and I have a decent number of friends, 200 or so friends on Facebook. That was not clearly working, but it was definitely an interesting experience and learned a lot from that. So some people have been asked, okay, so how do you characterize the difference here? What's going on here? Well, one way of looking at it is through the lens of illness versus wellness, right? So how would you characterize the difference between illness and wellness? Well, some people could think of it as a difference between I, single player, and we, together, multiplayer. Right? And thinking more carefully about this, what is this Occam's razor here? We asked ourselves at Kairos Labs, we thought, okay, if we really want to affect sustainable behavior change, what is the Occam's razor? What is the simplest, smallest thing that matters that we can start from? And our theory is in large part based upon our own experiences at home. Here, this is our chore chart at my home in the kitchen on our refrigerator. How many of you have a chore chart with your kids? Okay. I'm sharing some of our dirty laundry here. So I want to send out a little test to all of you. Just call out any patterns that you might see here. So we have two kids here, Naomi and Zach, and we're tracking specific behaviors that we want them to do through the week. Anybody? Just call out any patterns you might see. No one is cleaning. Can you say why? Any other patterns? When they're both participating, they're reaching the end goal. Okay. One more? Anybody else? Okay. I'll give you guys the teacher's edition here. So mornings are best. So you look at the first couple of tasks there. Brush teeth after waking up, wash face after brushing teeth. Those things are mostly in the morning. Those seem to be doing fairly well. Set a trigger. If you look at the first few objectives, they all follow a particular daily routine, right? Everyone wakes up, for the most part, every day. Everyone brushes their teeth every day. Everyone gets dressed every day, right? Everyone has dinner every day. Those tend to be the ones that looks like at the top, right, that seem to be performing best. Make it specific and small. So somebody said, no one's cleaning their room. That may not be specific enough, right? Versus if you say, wash your face after brushing your teeth, right? Pick up one thing after you enter your room, right? Now, TBD is what we call synchronous. So what would happen if I asked my 8-year-old daughter, Naomi, and 6-year-old son, Zach, to do some of these things together? And we didn't track this in July, but my wife and I have been seeing just anecdotally that they definitely tend to perform better when they're doing it together. So really what we believe at Kairos, what we need is coming from the gaming world, massively multiplayer behavior change games, right? And multiplayer being kind of the key issue here. And what do I mean by behavior change games? And this is a subgenre you may have heard of serious games. We announced this new genre at the Game Developer Conference earlier this year with Nike Plus, Professor B.J. Fogg from Stanford, Hope Lab, and Zamzi, and Limeade. And what we mean by behavior change games is not just quantified self, which is an aspect of that, but really games that apply behavior change and cognitive behavioral psychology for personal development, right? And underlining the term games, right? And that's really the vector that we're taking. So I think someone mentioned earlier Dr. Seligman's work, maybe not, but how many of you are familiar with Dr. Seligman's work? Okay, decent number. This has become kind of the framework, one of the frameworks that we are using in terms of understanding the levers for well-being or wellness. And Dr. Seligman, of course, former chair of the American Psychological Association, founder of Positive Psychology, now the head of the University of Pennsylvania Positive Psychology Lab. He and his graduate students are training all 40,000 Army drill sergeants on PERMA for PTSD and wellness training. So what is PERMA? PERMA, I'm giving you kind of the 10-second Cliff Notes version of this 300-page book, is positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. Now, most of these things, you can immediately see, are in games, aren't they? Right? With the exception of maybe meaning, right? And I loved Victor's talk earlier when we were talking about kind of values and kind of goal, I guess what I would call self-concept, right? And meaning can fill that role there. Of course, what we're also doing as game designers is playing with neurotransmitters and hormonal reactions in your brain with respect to oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine responses that, as gamers, we all know you get when you're playing games, right? But the challenge here is to really convert what might be in the real world a cortisolic response, right, a stressful response, to something that actually might release a DHEA response, which is kind of the eustress response, the good stress, right? So when you're in a game and you're being stressed out, most times it's that good stress, right? Or when you're playing basketball in the last second in the game and you've got the last shot, that's good stress, right? So, multiplayer, clearly World of Warcraft is a great example of multiplayer. Anyone can recognize, hopefully many of you can recognize this? No? Well, maybe that's a good thing. Alcoholics Anonymous. These are the medals you earn every month for staying sober. Tai Chi. Now, one of the interesting things about looking at a societal level about multiplayer behavior is societally, if you look at Japan, say, versus the United States, there's some really interesting research that shows that personal health behaviors seem to not have a societal impact in the aggregate. Consider smoking. US, thankfully, lower percentage of smokers now than before. However, life expectancy, terrible. Versus, in comparison to other countries, versus in Japan, where smoking is very high in comparison, and life expectancy is yet still very high, though, right? So there's some indicating research that shows that maybe there's something going on at the sociological level, right? It's that social cohesion, multiplayer, is the cause for this, that at the societal level, if you really want to make a dramatic change in health, that it needs to be multiplayer. The Peloton. I thought, what is the largest multiplayer behavior change experience? Can anybody guess why I put this up here? It's the Hajj. Anybody else, though? So, roughly 1 billion Muslims in the world today. If you are practicing Muslim, you are obligated to pray 5 times a day. That's 5 billion moments of meditation every day from this community, give or take, right? You take the actives versus the non-actives. I want to show you this little video here real quick, and then we'll wrap up. But this is an example in Paris. I don't know if this is actually real, but you'll get the idea here of how you can actually start to make fun experiences that affect behavior change in a multiplayer way. skip over the Oprah one real quick because we don't have time. So you may have heard of the saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Clearly, we have to go far, fast. One of the really canonical examples here of synchronous multiplayer is Nike Plus. Nike Plus has a great set of team-based mechanics, and we are stealing liberally with our partners at Nike and learning a lot from them. And Live in It, again, is our particular initial version from Kairos Labs, focusing on mobile habit mastery using social game mechanics. You can go up there now and join our private beta. We are right now in our third iteration of the game and testing that shortly. And real quickly, I'll show you kind of some of the results here. We have, from an earlier test, a player here who started at about 215 pounds and over about a 30-day period lost about 100 pounds. I'm sorry, that was a 100-day period. Each of those increments is in 3 days. Lost over about 100 pounds playing Live in It. And here we actually modeled it after some of the habits in the 4-hour body. And in our 100-day player test, we found that a very high percentage of people were still engaged with the game. So 70% of players were still engaged with the game after 100 days. But the thing that we're really interested in here is the bounce, what we call the bounce back metric. And that's 83% of people who fell off the wagon at some point actually came back on the wagon. And we believe that this notion of multiplayer game mechanics really helps there. And really getting people back on the wagon. So finally, this is my last slide. I just wanted to invite any of you. We actually have a new organization called Habit Design. It's really taken off in San Francisco, where it started. We have almost 300 people there. We also have a new group in New York starting on Monday, which already has about 120 people. If you're in New York or San Francisco, please join us. We're a network of professionals all sharing best practices about habit formation. That's it.
Thank you.